All right, so I'm here today with a pun lord. No, the Lord of the Pun.
That's true.
Yeah, Lord
Yes,
of the
yes.
Pun. He went by a few different gimmicks, right?
Very few. I was. Well, did we want to just jump into all the gimmicks, or how do you want to do that?
Well, I figured that'd be a good introduction.
Okay, so started off as just Mercer.
Yeah.
Then became Matt Mercer, Marvelous Matt Mercer.
It was like a big snowball.
Yes, well, a big, downhill turd. Man Pretty Matt Mercer was the last one.
Man, pretty. Yeah, I remember that on your single. Or was it on your single?
It was on. It was on the last ring robe I had made.
Oh yeah, yeah, I remember that. It was the tribute show is when you.
It was the tribute show for your dad. Well, I'll get heat for this, but I'm out of the business, so I don't care. Marvelous Michael Stevens,
Yeah.
who is a fantastic worker, and I never had an issue with him on my side.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of his tag team, the BFFs, the Beautiful Bald Besties. I think he's a fantastic performer. Mm-hmm. And I think if anybody has an opportunity to book him and his partner, they should.
Yeah.
That being said, I'd always heard through the grapevine that he and I had heat over the Marvelous gimmick. So like 8 years ago, he and I worked a show together, and I pulled him aside.
Yeah.
And I said, "Hey, man, do we have an issue?" And Duncan, you know me, like I'm not a tough guy. Like if we get into a fight, you're going to win.
Oh yeah, you're a big teddy bear.
I am. Yeah. And so I just asked him outright. I was like, "Do we have an issue over the Marvelous thing?" "Oh, no, brother, we're good." And I was like, "Okay, cool, because I've heard some stuff." No, man, that's just people stirring the pot." And I was like, "Okay."
Yeah.
A few years later, we were working another show together, and he just kept making comments throughout the night. And I'm just like, "Dude, you're aware this is fake, right?" Like, I guess Michael Stevens is his real name. I'm not sure. Matt Mercer is a figment of my imagination.
Yeah.
There's a musician, and I believe there's an actor named Matt Mercer. I'm neither one of those.
I think of
So to me, it does, like, if you want to be marvelous, be marvelous.
Yeah.
That's the reason the last handful of shows I was man pretty. I don't care. We are no different than what are they? The LARPing guys who go out there and play dungeon. And I'm going to piss off a lot of people saying that. I don't care.
Yeah. The professional role play.
Professional wrestling is cosplay.
It is. It really is. I always thought of it as Shakespeare.
Well, I was dating a girl a few years ago, and she asked me to describe it to her.
Yeah.
And I told her it's live action stunt theater.
Yeah. Professional
wrestling, WWE, Impact, Ring of Honor, they are not a sport that is on TV. They're a TV show about a sport.
Exactly.
It's not real. It is, like you said, it's an act. And people can get mad about that if they'd like to.
Yeah.
But it's a show. So, yeah, my big point of contention with a lot of people is that this is a show. I've never understood the guys who want to chop as hard as humanly possible. I've never understood the guys who...
Did you see that picture that I shared? It was like the
the funny thing about
bloodshot chest.
I laugh about that because I find it extremely hypocritical for you to share that. Because, well, here's why. Is that my first day of training over in Hazelhurst with your dad, that is exactly what I looked like whenever I left. Because your dad, there were 3 other guys who started that day.
The hazing process, huh?
Yeah, well, it was Wayne wanted to weed out the crap.
Yeah.
And so he had me and 3 other guys, all right, kids, grab a turnbuckle, turn your heads way. And it was him, you, at your little 12-year-old self.
Yeah.
And like 3, I want to say it was Dirty and a few other guys walked around and just chopped the fire out of us. And what's so funny is I have a friend from high school. I was still in high school whenever I started training. And she had always busted my balls about wanting to be a wrestler and it's fake and this, that, and the other. I went to school the next day and I'll never forget this. I was wearing a bright orange Hawaiian shirt.
Yeah.
And she goes, "So, Joey, is it fake like I told you it was going to be?" And I unbuttoned my shirt halfway. And this beautiful girl who I'd never had a chance with started crying. She's like, "Oh, my gosh, Joey, don't do this to yourself," and hugged me. And I was like, so this is how I get the ladies. I got to go for the sympathetic approach.
You have to. I messed up my fingers not too long ago, and I got the most sympathy.
Well,
Yeah,
but you're married, so you have that advantage.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what was life like before wrestling?
Well, in a lot of ways, wrestling was my life.
Yeah. When did you fall in love with it?
It is my very first memory in life, actually.
Yeah.
I was 4 years old, and the National Guard Armory in Waycross is about 2 miles away from the house I grew up in.
Yeah.
And my dad took me to watch the show. Other than, I believe, Chief Jay Strongbow, I couldn't tell you anyone else was on the show. Mm-hmm. I can tell you that in the main event, the referee was a former wrestler who could no longer work. The ring broke. The heel had a chain. The referee took it from the heel, and he punched him out, and the babyface won.
Yeah.
And being 4 years old, I was just enthralled. And my very first memory in life is telling my dad, I'm going to do that whenever I grow up.
Yeah.
There was never any, so many kids have an idea of, whenever I grow up, I want to be a fireman, or I want to be a police officer.
Yeah.
I want to do this. Like, from the time I was 4, I told my dad, I'm going to be a professional wrestler.
Yeah.
Whenever I was 16 or 15, one or the other, I was in high school, and my dad called me to his room one night, and he goes, Joey, you're getting older. Your grades suck. And you need to start worrying, getting your grades better, because I want you to go to school. I want you to do better than I did.
Yeah.
And my dad, he's a different man now. My dad was a very hard man whenever I was a kid, so he just kind of stared at me for a minute, and I knew what was coming. I just let him. I said, Dad, cuss me out, say whatever you need to. Like, I've told you my entire life, all I want to do is be a professional wrestler. And it was one of the best, bonding moments, you could call it, for me whenever I was a kid, because my dad just, sat there staring at me, very angry. Mm-hmm. And he goes, I'm pissed off at that. And I said, I know. And he goes, but this is all you've ever wanted to do. So if you do it, you need to make sure you're doing a great job at it.
Yeah, do it 100 or don't do it at all.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And that's my dad's philosophy on life. So from then, I had my dad's blessing. Mm-hmm. And do we just want to go right into me finding Hazelhurst and start training her?
Yeah, that was the next question I was going to ask was, how did you get connected with Wayne?
All right, so I was...
Was Wayne the first guy you went to?
He was.
Okay.
My plan was, we're in Georgia. I'm going to go to Atlanta. I'm going to go to the power plant.
Yeah.
And, Vince McMahon had to go and screw all that up for all of us.
Yeah. God.
So I went to, I was on the internet, and I was looking at different schools in the South, and the options I found were WWA 4.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, it's essentially the power plant. Like, I'm not sure if you know the story of that.
Yeah.
But they basically emptied out the power plant, got all the weights, all the rings and everything from there before WWE were able to get it, I believe.
Man.
I found, at the time, NWA Florida and... is it IWA Florida, I believe? Something like that.
I think so.
Or
maybe?
IPW Florida?
Something like that.
Yeah.
I was 12 when this shit was going on.
Yeah. But I found those, and then, thankfully, it was about 3 months before I graduated high school when I just found... I don't even know how I found it, but I found, show results from Hazelhurst.
Oh, okay.
And next show is going to be March whatever.
Yeah.
So, or February, whatever.
So it was a convenient. It was the closest thing.
It was the convenience of it being a little over an hour from my home.
Yeah.
I went to the show with my dad one night, and we enjoyed the show.
Yeah.
I talked to your dad, and I'm a firm believer. You know this about me. I'm a Christian. I believe in the way that God works and the opportunities that He lays before us.
Yeah. And that was the same way. He was a very spiritual dude.
He was. But we went to the show and everything, and I asked Wayne, I was like, so what do I have to do to start training? And he's like, how old are you? I was like, I'm 18. He goes, all right, well, you look like you're 12, so I need to see an ID. And I showed him my picture, and he's like, geez, son, you grow some facial hair or something. You look like you're 12 years old, which I did.
Yeah.
I was a very muscular 12-year-old at that point.
Yeah, yeah. Just like whenever I shave, I look like a giant third grader, so I understand what you're talking
I have
about.
the same problem. I look like a giant kid who just needs to take a nap because of the bags under my eyes now.
Yeah.
And he goes, all right, come here on Wednesday, and we're going to start training you.
Yeah.
And it was February, I want to say 15th, 2003. It was the same day that Garrett's son Cameron was born.
Oh, yeah.
Because I always joke with Cameron that he and I have the same birthday because that's the day like I started actually training.
Yeah.
But that day there were 3 other guys, and Wayne, just put the screws to all of us. Like I'd mentioned, the chopping thing. Yeah. And he just wanted to see who was going to show up the next week. I was the only.
Yeah.
And Wayne, I remember Wayne and you were just kind of hanging around the ring. I think Tommy and Paul were there.
Yeah.
And it was just like, you actually came back, and I was like, yeah, dude, I told you guys, this is all I want to do. And they're like, all right, we're going to do this.
Oh,
and that's how the ball got rolling.
Yeah, man. God, I can't remember because I was there when you started, and I was there when Garrett started, and I don't know which one busted their lip at the very first training session. No, it might have been Garrett.
It had to have been Garrett. I didn't have a busted lip. I did. My long list of injuries, the first one that started was, and anybody who's ever been in a ring knows this pain whenever you bruise your heel.
Ooh,
whenever I started taking front bumps, I bruised my heel. And it took me like 3 months before I could really start taking a flip bump properly because you don't realize that you put all that weight on your heel whenever you're going up and over.
Yeah.
So I bruised my heel, and I just could not get front bumps right for like the next 3 months.
Yeah.
Which is funny in hindsight because I started taking front bumps off of everything to make stuff look more impactful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how did that first bump feel?
I always joke with people that, and it's true, and I'm sure you've seen this whenever guys take that first bump, the first thing you'll see is somebody will pop up, reach behind them, and check to make sure they haven't crapped their tights.
Yeah.
Or their pants, rather.
Oh, yeah.
So my first bump, that's what I did. I kept reaching back there, and I think it was Paul or Tommy was like, did you crap your pants again? I was like, maybe.
Yeah. Just blame it on the heat, the sweaty crack,
Well, it's March, so it's already 100 degrees outside in South Georgia.
Yeah, Georgia only has one season.
True.
Do you remember your first match?
Unfortunately. Unfortunately. My first official match, I'll say this. God rest your dad's soul. He loved me. I loved your dad.
I already know where you're going.
He was good to me. But your dad was good to a lot of people. And if guys showed up to work for your dad, oh, yeah, I'll let you work with so-and-so. And he would have a 7-hour show with 27 matches, 3 of which were actually worth watching.
Yeah, I pulled a VHS out, and there was a card that was, like, tucked in it, and there were, like, 10 matches on the card.
I don't doubt it one bit.
And a lot of them were people pulling double duty.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there was the Katrina relief show in 2005, and Paul and Tommy were in some way on every match, whether they were a manager for, like, Tommy was a manager for Psycho in one match, and then he worked one match.
I think that was right after I'd left.
Yeah, it was 2005. I looked through another VHS tape, and I saw you in your first gimmick. You had the orange shorts, and you had a singlet. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I saw that on the VHS before I came over.
What was his name? Nosferatu?
Yeah, Mike.
What Wayne had in mind, because I'd been working security for about 6 or 8 months at that point. Mm-hmm. And Wayne, to his credit, he never charged me a dime to train.
Yeah.
But he said, you're going to pay your dues. So you're going to referee matches. You're going to work security. You're going to tear down the ring at shows, put it up before shows.
Yeah.
Take down all the chairs. So I was just like, okay, cool. If this is what I have to do to get in the ring, I'll do that. Yeah. The idea that Wayne had was for me and Michael. He's going to have a match, lose to the babyface. Afterwards, I'll come in there as security. He'll knock me down, and I'll, at 18 years old with my voice super high, I need a match right now. I'm not going to put up with this. And so Wayne, do we want to see Mercer? Is that your name? Do we want to see Mercer in there? And me and Michael had rehearsed this match. Like, there was no way it's going to be a 3-minute match. There's no way it can go wrong. We do the spot. He beats down the babyface. I come in there. He pushes me off. I challenge him to a match. Get into the ring. Mercer, lay down. I literally just got in here.
He's blown up.
He was blown up, and he goes, give me a punch. And I got to the point I threw a pretty decent working punch. That night, I did not throw a pretty decent working punch. I threw catfight punches like I was on the Jerry Springer show. They looked awful.
Man.
Thankfully, it was over, and your dad pulled me aside afterwards, and he goes, I should not have let you get in the ring. That was a mistake on my part. I was like, thank you.
Man, and God rest Michael's soul, man. God rest him. He's
I had no idea.
Yeah, he passed away whenever I was in high school.
I had no clue. I'd never knew that.
He had a very stiff working punch.
If he did, I don't recall that because he was too blown up to do anything.
Well, the 20-foot ring, you were blown up by the time you got to the other side of it.
You know, I tell people all the time how spoiled I was because Wayne, he wanted to. I truly think he wanted this to be the WWE of the South.
Yeah.
He wanted to start something new, and he had so many great ideas. Unfortunately, he had a lot of bad ones.
Yeah.
And they commingled. It does. And I think that's going to be with anybody in the business.
Right here. This guy right here.
Yeah.
I have terrible ideas.
Yeah. It's me too. But he told me whenever I started training with him, he goes, you know, you're going to be spoiled training in this ring because your dad had a WWE quality 20 by 20 made.
Yeah. He got the plans from King Kong Bundy.
I don't doubt that at all.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that ring I was trained in was bumping on a cloud.
Yeah.
And then every other indie I worked was a 16 or 18 ring. 16s especially are horrible. 18s are really good rings.
Yeah. It's a good middle ground for sure.
Absolutely. But, I mean, like your cardio just running the ropes like that, and people don't realize how much of a difference that extra step or two makes.
Oh, yeah.
From a 16 to a 20 by 20. But that ring, you could bump all day long in it.
Yeah.
It was stiff, you know, but most rings are going to be.
Yeah.
But comparative to a 16-foot, night and day.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Man, I remember Brooks's ring, the Sunbelt ring, is the closest.
Great ring.
That's the closest ring that I've found that bumps like Dad's ring. To you know, like in terms of stiffness and bounce.
I've been in, I forget who had it, but someone had an old WCW ring.
Yeah.
That I worked. It was somewhere outside of Atlanta, but it was an old WCW ring. And again, you see the quality of that. And I mean, and High Spots has great 18 by 18s. They've got good 16 by 16s. The problem is so many shows are, they look up the plans online and think, oh, I can do that. Yeah. And the build quality is horrible. And you're bumping, like they don't have actual mats underneath. It's like carpet padding.
Oh, Irvin Price.
Yeah.
So what advice do you have to newcomers, like people just grinding their teeth in the business?
I'm giving you dead air right now. This is killing the podcast.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I'll edit and post.
The opportunity to do more is so great right now. I've heard people complain about the business, and it's so weird because I'm now in my mid-30s. I was wrestling right out during high school.
Yeah.
I was 18 years old, and then I was hearing guys who had been around since the late 70s, early 80s talk about how good we had it now.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way now looking at the guys who are breaking in now.
Yeah.
Because if you are breaking into the business right now, everyone has a crappy phone that you can record a match with, put it on YouTube.
Yeah.
And if you do one spectacular thing on there, you've got 100,000 views, and someone from Impact is going to see that. Someone from Ring of Honor is going to see that.
Yeah.
Someone from Combat Zone, from Atlanta Wrestling Entertainment. One of these companies is going to notice it because, hey, why does this guy in this town working this little crap indie show that no one's ever heard of, why does he have 100,000 views?
Yeah.
There are better opportunities now to get noticed. The business, I think, is smaller now than it's ever been.
You're right.
But it's bigger now than it's ever been at the same time because there's so many different...
kinds.
Well, there's so many different kinds, but there's also... There's YouTube, there's Twitch, there's
multiple streaming platforms, multiple ways of getting the product out.
And you go to a WWE show now, you're not going to see as many casual wrestling fans as you did 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But it's all those hardcore fans. And those are the same people that are like, oh, Austin Theory, I've seen him. He's in FIP.
Yeah.
He's in Atlanta Wrestling Entertainment. That's going to be a guy in 5 years that WWE is going to sign.
Yeah.
Those are the people that are like, oh, I watched that match Keith Lee had last week, and I think he actually did just get signed.
Yeah.
And they see all these guys, and you see that the business now, I'm not a fan of their in-ring style, but I'm a huge fan of the Young Bucks. These are two guys who...
They're so business-minded. They're so smart when it comes to making money.
Well, and it's not just that, but I mean, these are two guys who really were like, we just want to have fun of the wrestling business. They are... They have never had WWE publicity. They were on TNA for like, what, a year or 2 years, something like that, maybe?
Something like that.
As Generation Me, some terrible name. Those guys, if they're not millionaires, they're not far off.
Yeah.
Cody Rhodes is doing the best work of his career right now. And Cody was always good, but Cody right now is one of my absolute favorite performers.
He was very underappreciated where he was
100%,
to where he is now.
100%. But here's the guy who decided, you know what, I don't need your $100,000 a year contract. And now, whether or not it's true, you know, you'd have to ask him. You'd have to see his tax statements.
Oh, yeah.
He claimed he had a 7-figure year this last year.
I don't doubt it.
Between Ring of Honor, between New Japan, between Impact, he was there for a minute.
And the indie shows.
Indie shows, merchandise sales, all this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And they're doing these little videos being the elite.
Oh, all that ad revenue from YouTube, I'm sure
absolutely.
they're racking up money.
And that's what I'm saying. You know, that was my long-winded way of getting to this, is for the guys who don't promote themselves like that, who aren't trying to get a store on Pro Wrestling Tees, who aren't really putting themselves out there, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Exactly. And there's some people that's doing it right. Like, they're growing really fast. Like, Effie's growing really fast.
Effie is going to be a megastar in this business.
And whenever I saw him and it was him versus Joey Ryan, I saw that on the flyer and I was like, that's money. I was wanting to do that.
I saw him versus Tommy Dreamer. It's going to be happening. And here's the guy, and apparently I worked shows with him like 5-6 years ago before I was done.
Yeah.
I had no clue.
Yeah.
I saw his promos before the tribute show last year. And I called Morgan Davis, and I was like, dude, who is this? Like, this guy is so money.
He's so great, man.
And solid in the ring. You know, good in the ring. You know, I'm not going to say he's great. He's good in the ring. You know, from my personal perspective. But that dude's character...
His character wins over the rest of it.
Dude, if he does not make Vince McMahon millions of dollars, there is a travesty in this business.
I'm sure Cornette is just
yeah. Double cheese, double it. I'm doing Bruce Pritchard, wrong podcast. But I mean, but here's the thing about it is you look at someone like Joey Ryan.
Yeah.
Same thing. Joey Ryan never had that mainstream publicity. Like, again, I think 6 months on TNA.
Yeah. And he did Lucha Underground for a little bit, too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, nothing major. Like, whenever TNA was on Spike, he was there for like 6 months whenever they were losing the TV deal. Yeah. He doesn't have the WWE following. He did one stupid spot. Yeah, and it gets on ESPN. It gets on Fox Sports. It gets on NBC Sports Network.
Yeah, it went viral.
It went viral. But here's a guy who's been around forever. Yeah. Is a great worker. Like, is a fantastic, solid in-ring worker. Yeah. Absolutely. And people can complain about that all they want to. It's no different than Mr. Sacco. Yeah. It's no different than the Worm. It's no different than the People's Elbow.
A gimmick's a gimmick.
A gimmick is a gimmick. Yeah. And that dude has taken his dong and made millions of dollars off of it. And I mean, I read something recently where he bought a 6-figure house recently. Ooh. And here's the guy who, again, never had that mainstream publicity. There are so many opportunities for guys, be it a Pro Wrestling Tees store, be it their Twitter, be it their YouTube page, whatever the case may be. If you're not promoting yourself and really getting your name out there, you have only yourself to blame for that.
I think he's the only guy that's not in porn that bought a 6-figure house with his wiener. You know, like...
Yeah, I think there's a good possibility
There's a good possibility. And, like, going viral, the Gym Nasty Boys is another one. They went viral just for eating whipped cream out of Effie's butt.
I have not seen that.
You have not seen that.
And I can almost guarantee you I'm not going to.
No. It was just that one... Someone took a picture of White Mike. They did some sort of spot where they had Effie in, like, a wheelbarrow position, like, fixing to pick him up for something. And then Mike just pulls whipped cream out of nowhere and, like, sprays it on his butt. Like, pulls his trunks down, sprays it on his butt. And, like, that picture went viral for, like, 2-3 weeks.
All right, see, now I completely agree with Cornette. Those guys are killing the business. They need to get out. No, I think I've heard the name, the Gym Nasty Boys. I think I've heard of them, but if I've actually seen them, I couldn't swear to you.
They're fest wrestling regulars.
I've probably seen them and just don't recall their name then.
Yeah. Have you been to Fest?
I haven't. I've heard it's a fantastic show. I believe that's where Effie was actually going to be working Tommy.
Yeah. Teddy Badstreet invited me to Fest. I think it's 21st, maybe 22nd, something like that.
No idea.
But dude, you should come. He said it's like a rock show. It's like nothing you've ever seen before in terms of professional wrestling.
I may do that.
I got a whole bunch of fucking notes right now. Now, see, I'm a jobber in this podcast business. I'm just getting it
I
started.
was a jobber in the wrestling business, brother.
Dude, me too. I only won one match, and that's it.
The first time, and I'll actually going back to working for your dad.
Yeah.
Whenever Wayne put the tag title on me, I was furious because I'd laid out. I've always had the mindset that if it's a jobber, a James Ellsworth, James Ellsworth has a point to be on that show. 20 years ago, Barry Horowitz, he had a reason to be on the show. But I believe that everyone, no matter how big or insignificant their character may be, there needs to be a reason for them to be on the show.
Yeah.
A big point of contention I'd come to with Wayne is he had started pushing me, or not even pushing me, but he realized I could cut promos.
Yeah.
It was one of the few things I was good at.
Yeah, you could talk.
I could talk. And so he had me doing commentary, he had me working some matches. And then as I started getting more and more comfortable in the ring, he started like giving me more matches, longer matches. And he had asked me what I wanted to do. And I'd laid out the 6-month storyline of me chasing the Cruiserweight Championship, losing, and then being like, the old $1 Million Championship thing.
Yeah.
I would have the Marvelous Championship.
Oh, you bring your own.
Oh, I would have my own title. And then at Firestorm, we would do a unification. Street fight, ladder match, something. Like I wanted to do something where we would unify the titles.
Yeah, something big.
Something big. And Wayne... It's one of the only things I ever had an issue with Wayne about.
Who'd he tag you with?
Rouge. I'll get to that.
And that's the thing, and that's what I've noticed with all the tapes I've been watching is that he would just tag two people, pull two people out of his ass and tag. Like Dirty Dog and Spaz were a tag team. They called themselves Dirty South.
Well, and I believe that's who we won the tag belts from.
Yeah, I bet.
But here's what happened is I'd asked him like, hey, do I need to have a belt made?
Yeah.
Or do we have another one of these WCW replicas we can put some stickers on? And he goes, oh, no, I've got a belt. We can use that. And I said, okay, but we're doing that storyline. Oh, Mercer, that's great. That's exactly what we're going to do. Then I get to the show, and he's like, we're going to start that next month. And I was like, all right, well, that'll put us at 4 months to Firestorm, and it's a 6-month angle. Like, I'd laid everything out.
Yeah.
I see like the storyline ideas I come up with, very visual. I can see how they would lay out on TV, how I would book the segments and all that. And I was thinking, like, even if we just do this in front of the audience, there's a way to present this in such a way to where they will be invested over the next 6 months.
Yeah.
And instead, Wayne goes,
you tag with Rue?
Yeah, he goes, hey, you're gonna wrestle Dirty tonight. It's like, okay, Dirty's going over. Okay, that's fine. And I was like, all right, so we're not going to do my angle. We'll figure something else out. 20 minutes later, hey, it's going to be you versus Dirty's partner. I'm going to put you over.
All right.
No, I never cared about winning matches. Yeah. I'll tell you a story about that in a moment.
Yeah.
A few minutes later, it's actually it's going to be you and Rouge going over Dirty and his partner. Wayne, they're the tag champs. Oh, yeah. All right, you guys are the new tag champs. I was like, wait, what?
He was. I want to say he was more scatterbrained than I was, doing this promotion shit. But I'm probably the most scatterbrained promoter.
If he wanted to just present the aesthetic he would always have for the shows, because he built a really nice set. For the shows. I mean, obviously the ring was great. We had actual guardrails. It was a very well done show.
Yeah.
And I can take credit for killing it because I made a stupid mistake with the fire incident.
Oh, God. I remember that now.
But Wayne, for all the good things he wanted to do, again, I think he just had, for every one good idea he had 2 bad ones. And I loved Wayne, and I told him this when the last time he and I talked. Wayne was always great to me, and I thanked him. I think a year or two before he passed away, I bumped into him somewhere.
Yeah.
And I told him how much I appreciated like him giving me a spot whenever he didn't have to.
Yeah.
That being said, he tagged me with Rouge. And so we tried to make it work. We what was the name I came up with? The Rock and Roll Heavenly Bodies, because he was the Rock gimmick.
Yeah.
It's like it was just something we could do. God rest his soul. And I do believe, because he and I spoke some, he got saved before he passed away, so I believe he's in a better place.
That's good.
But I think the 2 best ribs I've ever seen on him, I pulled one. The other one was someone changed his music halfway out to the ring, and they started playing, was it No More Horses from Silence of the Lambs?
Oh, my God.
Because he
Horses.
looked like
He looked like Buffalo Bill.
He looked exactly like Buffalo Bill. And I think that was the night I worked him. I was like, would you touch me? I would touch me.
Man, Rouge broke my ankle one time.
I don't doubt that.
Yeah, I was going to have foot surgery. I was like 9 years old. I was going to have an arch rebuild.
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, and we were in Douglas at the National Guard Armory, and here was a bad idea from Wayne, was that I was going to, because he was facing Justin that night, and I was always his escort, and I would go out, because he did his open challenge thing. I would go out and start talking crap to him, and then he would get me in the ring, put me in an ankle lock, break my ankle. And then, I sold it. Terry sold it. Terry's not an actor. She sold it good. He got nuclear heat that night. And Dad was like, yeah, so the next show in Hazelhurst, we're going to run an angle with Justin and Rouge. And I was like, yeah, but no one in Hazelhurst is here. And I'm 9 years old, and I'm talking some booking logic to my own dad. Hey.
Well, and that's something I told him once. It's because YouTube was not a thing yet, which is so crazy to think about. Now we take it for granted. Mm-hmm. It's been around for 12, 13 years now.
Yeah. It wasn't around when SGWA was around.
Right. But the thing, now, and that's what I was saying a minute ago about the way to promote yourself. Mm-hmm. But Wayne had the capability of, let's just do Windows Media Player, record videos and put them on the website. Let's do something. Yeah. Because Wayne, I think, had a very similar mind that I did. Mm. And he saw it laying out like the TV show. Yeah. This is how we would present this if it were on TV. Yeah. And you can't do that if you're running nothing but house shows, because maybe 3 people from Hazelhurst are going to drive to Douglas. Yeah. You can't run shows that way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He definitely went in blind. Like you said, one idea was good, 2 were bad. I think, some ideas were good, just the execution was poor.
I can agree to that.
Yeah. Like the fire gimmick. All
right, so should we go ahead and address that?
Yeah, let's address this.
Okay, so
the story, because once again, I was a little shit eater in the back. The story I heard was that Mean Mike had the fire extinguisher, and he couldn't get the pin pulled.
Okay, so this is the total snowball effect of bad idea after bad idea after bad idea. Yeah. It starts earlier in the day. Now, I am still training. I'm still working security, setting up chairs, tearing down the ring, all of that. Yeah. So I'm pretty much the punk gopher boy that they would be like, hey, Mercer, go buy everybody lunch. Okay, can I have your credit cards?
No, you're going to buy it.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Just whatever I could do. Yeah. So Paul and Tommy pulled me aside. They said, hey, Mercer, we need you to go get something. I said, okay, what am I getting? Lighter fluid. And I don't know. I can't recall. It's 15 years ago, but I don't remember if I went there. I believe I went to Dollar General and told them I needed lighter fluid, and they gave me charcoal starter. Okay. And I didn't know the difference. So I come back, and I do remember, clear as day, I gave Paul and Tommy, is this what you guys were looking for? Oh, yeah, that's fine. Yeah. And they just blew it off. I don't know what they're doing. And so the gimmick for anyone who's listening to this was going to be, at the end of the main event, which was going to be a 3-team ladder match, the Hills were going to put Paul and Tommy in a body bag, cover it with the lighter fluid, and set it on fire. Yeah. So if this were done with an inkling of good idea, they would have made sure the fire extinguisher was ready. Yep. They did not.
It was an old fire extinguisher they found in the attic of the fairgrounds that had been expired, but they're like, well, the needle says it's good, so we're just going to run with it.
And the idea is, if you use actual lighter fluid,
it kind of lays on the top of it.
It lays on the top of it. You can pour that on your arm, set on fire. That's the reason whenever you look at the old ECW footage of them putting Boss Mahoney or Tommy Dreamer through a table that's lit on fire, they might get some superficial burns, but it's going to be no different than catching boiling water on your hand real quick. Yeah. You're not actually experiencing third-degree burns unless your clothes catch on fire, and then it's a different story. Yeah. The problem is, because they just, that's fine. They put Paul in this body bag. They cover it with charcoal starter.
And it just soaks in the bag.
It's soaked in the bag. They zip the bag up, and then they set it on fire. And so Tommy ends up with 3rd-degree burns all over his body. Yeah.
And he finished the match, too.
He finished the match.
Shooting star press.
From that point on, according to a lot of guys, this is where Mercer Killed Hazelhurst came in.
God, no, you
Because
didn't.
that was what a lot of people told me. That's part of the reason I was no longer welcome there from a lot of people.
Oh God.
That's the reason a lot of people did not want to work with me and had an issue with me back then.
Yeah.
Is there was the belief that I'd made the mistake whenever the two guys who had every reason to hate my guts for that were Paul and Tommy.
Yeah.
Paul never had a bad word to say to me about it.
Yeah.
Tommy came to me and said, "Did you get the wrong stuff?" And I was like, "I got what you guys told me to get.
Yeah.
I gave it to you.
Yeah.
You told me it was fine."
I remember Tommy was pissed.
Tommy was furious. Well, they both were, and and everyone had a right to be. But the thing is, this was a stupid idea that no one looked into. No one looked to see, like, do we have the right stuff? Do we have a fire extinguisher ready? Because realistically, this should not be one of those things. Oh yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
This should be one of those things. Hey, is this in place? Is this in place? Is this in place? We need to make sure everything is in order.
Yeah.
And they didn't do that.
I remember Mike got punched a couple times in the face,
which was unfair to him.
Yeah.
Paul, because, and I'm not going to name names, but there were about 6 guys who genuinely hated me back then and blamed me for this issue.
Yeah.
And they had pretty much almost convinced me to quit. Garrett, Paul, and Tommy would not let me.
Yeah.
In hindsight, I can't thank them enough for that because, this is the only thing I ever wanted to do in life.
Yeah.
But they had convinced me this was all my fault.
Yeah.
Oh, you see how we only have 200 people out there? It used to be 500. You killed this town.
What the fuck ever,
Those guys they'd gotten in my head about that. And so I pulled Paul aside one night and I was like, "Man, you have to hit me." And he goes, "Mercer, this isn't your fault." And I said, "You have to hit me." And he looked at me because me, Paul, and Tommy all have a great relationship.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Mercer, I'm not going to hit you. It's not your fault." And I was like, "I need to get this off my chest. I need you to do it." And he goes, "Mercer, I'm not going to." And out of nowhere, he gave me the hardest chop I've ever had in my life. Split my chest open. He goes, "You good?" And I was like, "Yeah, we good." He's like, "I never had a problem."
Yeah.
So to this day, I still find it ridiculous that those 6 guys, who I'm not going to mention, had an issue with me. And Paul, Tommy, Scotty, and Timmy never actually had a problem with me.
Yeah, it was, I mean, if all the parties involved don't have a problem with you, then everyone else needs to keep their nose out of it.
Right.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, man. Well, I mean, there was a bunch of cases of Murphy's Law in SGWA for sure, and I think that's the one that was the most remembered. Like I said, I mean, it was a good idea, just poor execution.
I agree with that.
Yeah, it's just one of the things that they should have tested out for definitely should have tested it out. Who's your favorite opponent?
Easily, my favorite opponent would be. I had a few.
Yeah,
it's tough to narrow it down. I will put the series of matches I had with Garrett Crawford, Traz, Chase Adams, whatever you want to call him.
Yeah, I forgot about Chase Adams.
Which would have been a great gimmick if he had run with the complete athlete thing the way I come up with for him, because I was too fat and short to do it myself. We had a series of matches between 2005 and 2008 that I think if a bigger audience, the Atlanta audience that was watching NWA Wildside, Anarchy at the time, McDonough, which was Deep South Wrestling for WWE at the time, I think if any of those shows had seen those matches we had during that time, we would have been noticed. We would have both been able to go on the map.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because he and I are best friends. I'm not sure. He and I, to me, never had a bad match. Our chemistry was always really strong. Me and Morgan Davis, I always felt like he and I pulled out the best of each other.
Morgan Davis is a great dude.
Morgan Davis, and he's one of my absolute best friends in life in general.
Yeah,
I love him with all of my heart. If Morgan Davis, much like myself, were a few inches taller and in better shape, he would have a job somewhere.
Yeah.
Morgan is a fantastic
just
chicken crap heel.
Yeah.
He is a great underneath baby face. The fact that Morgan does not have a spot somewhere. He and PYB, Steve Goins, are a fantastic tag team.
Pump your brakes, man.
Absolutely. Fantastic tag team. I had very good matches with Nick Primo, who is Nick Iakea, Prince Iakea's son. Sidebar, I'll actually tell this story real quick. Whenever we were running in Lions for UCCW, the main guys up there were me, Donovan Sweet, Drew Blood, and David Raines, Tim Coursey.
Yeah.
Somehow, and to this day I have no clue how, Mike Hayner, Prince Iakea, former WCW TV and Cruiserweight champion, saw videos of our shows, and he emailed the guys and he said, "Hey, my name is Mike Hayner. I'm a former professional wrestler. I would like to train my son to be a wrestler. Could we come to your shows?" We're like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And Iakea walks in like, "Hey, guys," and we're like, "What are you doing here?" Like, you've been somewhere. You've done something.
Oh, yeah.
He worked out with us for about a month. It was really the five of us working out with him and his son on a weekly basis. And to this day, the biggest compliment I've received nearly in life, but definitely in professional wrestling, was after a month of working out. And I know IK was not a megastar, but he was there whenever WCW was at its hottest.
Yeah.
He was at the show. A lot of us cannot say that. A lot of us would kill to have, a 2-month run as a jobber on WWE TV, let alone have a 5-year run on, major national wrestling TV.
Yeah.
IKEA pulled me aside one night while I'm lacing up my boots, getting ready for the show. And a lot of times we would just book the show on the fly, like, who showed up? All right, you're with so-and-so, you're, whatever. And he goes, "Hey, Mercer, Nick's picking up things really quick, don't you think?" And I said, "Yeah, I mean, he's built like a brick, He learned from you, obviously. You learned from the Malenkos. The kid's got a good pedigree. I think I want to put him in the ring tonight." Okay. And I'm not thinking anything about it. I'm lacing up my boots, and he goes, "What do you want to do with him out there?" And and I just stared at him and said, "What?" And he goes, "Mercer, you don't know how good you are.
Yeah.
You're good in the ring," which to this day, I've always had issues with my confidence. And he goes, "You're good in the ring. You're a great character worker. I want you to wrestle Nick."
Yeah.
So here's a guy who could have gone pretty much anywhere, used his limited amount of fame from, his WCW run, and got his son at least a tryout somewhere.
Yeah.
And said, "I want you to work him." Which to this day is just one of the coolest compliments I've ever received. I still talk to Nick on occasion, but
that's good.
Great dude, but always enjoyed my matches with him. I thought me and Ox Madison had some really good matches.
Yeah, Ox is a good dude.
I would say probably my best and most intense matches, and it's a shame a bigger audience didn't see them, would be against David Raines, Timmy Coursey. Timmy's another one of those guys. If he were a few inches taller and in better shape, Timmy could have really done something.
Oh, yeah. Him and Drew both.
Drew as well, which Drew, I think Drew enjoys what he does. Drew, enjoys working the handful of shows every few months.
Drew, I remember Drew and Tim did, the Fabulous Finishers?
Fabulous Finishers, which they were, and I don't know if they got to run with the gimmick names they wanted to do. I think even your dad always pushed them as David Raines and Drew Blood. But they were going to be the Natural Male E-Enhancement.
Oh.
Joe Bobber. And I wanted to be the third member of the Fabulous Finishers because I was an 80s worker anyway.
Yeah.
And I wanted to change my gimmick name to Mark J. Baroni.
I like that.
And just lose every match. Already be in the ring whenever our opponents are introduced.
Yeah.
I
just
always
turn the lights out, you'll be in the ring, and then
absolutely. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention one of my favorite matches I ever had. God rest his soul. I think about him and I cry about him all the time. But Joey Kidman.
Yes, Joey Kidman.
Talk about someone who should be on Monday nights and be a megastar right now.
Yeah, Joey was fantastic, man. He's a good dude. He's a great soul. He
didn't train legs. That was the only problem he had.
Yeah.
And I used to bust his balls about that all the time.
Yeah.
Looked like a rhino chicken. He was too heavy up top. He had little bitty bird legs.
Yeah, man.
But, if there was a guy who his worst match is still better than so many guys' best.
Yeah.
God rest his soul. Fantastic worker. Should be on TV somewhere right now.
Yeah. I know a lot of people miss him. I miss him too.
Dearly. Me and Morgan talk about him all the time, and it's tough for either one of us not to start thinking about him and, breaking down a little bit. It's just he was such a good dude. He has such a great passion for the business.
Yeah.
He just great. Wonderful human being.
Oh, yeah. Wonderful person. And I think Payne, Payne's another one that, he was real close to Kidman. Kidman and Slater, Jake Slater.
Their matches, I would put against any WWE match the matches they had, the series of matches they had, those guys, I mean, it was peanut butter and jelly, man. Those guys just mixed so perfectly out there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And would just hold a crowd in the palm of their hand.
Mm-hmm. So, in closing, are you officially fully done with the business?
I am completely done as an in-ring performer.
As an in-ring performer, I don't believe that.
I don't care what you believe. Well, here's the thing, and this is going to go back to it all ties together. Everything, I'm not a believer in coincidence. I'm a believer in God's hand in everything. Yeah. So that goes back to, I'll tell you this, one of my favorite verses in the Bible, or one of my favorite stories in the Bible, is in Matthew 18. Uh-huh. In Matthew 18, some children are playing with Jesus, and the disciples try to shoo them away. Yeah. And Jesus says, no, be innocent like a child, be humble like a child, and you're the greatest in God's kingdom. Mm-hmm. And I've always loved that story. So I was talking to my dad one day, and I said, how about Matt Mercer? That's where that came from. Mm-hmm. My dad goes, I like that. And a few days later, he goes, have you ever heard of a boxer named Marvelous Marvin Hagler? I was like, I've heard of him, but I couldn't tell you anything about him. He goes, well, he was a big smack talker. People paid money to watch him, get beat up. They didn't like him. He goes, you're kind of like that. People don't like you. I love you too, Dad. So he goes, I think you should be Marvelous, Matt Mercer. Mm-hmm. And so my dad was the one who suggested that for me.
It's a good alliteration, too. It rolls off the tongue.
And I love alliteration. Ravishing Rick Rude, Stunning Steve. I love stuff like that. So, that's a little bit of, I believe, God's hand on this. Like, God just giving me that Bible verse I've always loved since I was a kid. Yeah. And then it comes into fruition in this. Mm-hmm. And I know there's going to be a lot of people that don't have the same belief in God that I do. They're going to hear this and like just, oh God, shut up, dude. Not going to happen. Of course. If you're proud with it, don't, absolutely. Don't hide it. I can't say enough good things about what God does for me. Exactly. But I will say this: in 2012, I did a tryout in Waterloo, Iowa. Every year they have the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame weekend. Yeah. Jim Ross and Jerry Briscoe are usually there as talent agents for WWE. Mm-hmm. And they will send footage to WWE every year of who they think is going to be the best performer there. Yeah. I saved up the money, drove to Waterloo, Iowa, did this tryout, and I was actually, afterwards, me and my girlfriend at the time, we go to the hotel bar, we're going to get some dinner, and I walk in, I see Larry the Axe Hennig. Oh. And he's sitting there talking to one of the WWE officials. Mm-hmm. And first and foremost, I was like, oh, well, Larry, it's an honor to meet you. My name's Joey. I wrestle as Matt Mercer. And he goes, oh, son, did you do the tryout? How'd you do? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And couldn't have been nicer to me. And he was sitting with, for the life of me, I can't recall his name, but it was another official from WWE who was there. And Larry goes, well, hey, son, how'd you do? And I was like, oh, well, you'd have to ask him. And, well, how'd I do? Trying to get information. And he goes, we loved you. He goes, you're entertaining, you work the gimmick, you're old school, we liked what you did out there, but you're 5'8" and you don't have a good body. We're not going to give you a job. And I can never knock honesty. Yeah. Whether it is with a job and my boss tells me, you suck at this, you need to fix this. Mm-hmm. If it's with a girl I'm dating, if it's whatever the case may be, if someone is honest with me, I can never knock that because you're not trying to protect me with a lie. Yeah. It's just the stone cold truth, and I love that. Mm-hmm. And I just stood there for a moment, and I said, thank you, but I plan on proving you wrong, and I plan on having a job there with you guys one day. And he goes, I like that attitude. He goes, but right now, we love what you do. Mm-hmm. You can be a great indie worker. We don't have anything for you. Yeah. And I shook his hand. I said, thank you.
I'm sure it's real easy for them to say that, too, because they have to say it all the time.
But here's the thing, is they were not being polite to people. Yeah. Jim Ross straight up told one guy, like, why did you waste your money and come here? Yeah. Like, there was one guy, like, he destroyed this kid in front of everyone. There was, 60 guys in this room who came for this tryout. And Jim Ross just called this one guy out, and he goes, you're fat, you're horrible in the ring. You should know better than to have spent your money to come here. Why are you here? Man. Just destroyed this kid. So, whenever... I wish I could remember his name, but whenever he was telling me, we enjoy your work, you're entertaining, we like what you do, we're not going to give you a job. I took that, I took that as his word because they were not being polite to people that day.
Yeah. It's probably the nicest way he could have said it.
Right. And I mean, and again, they were not being polite to people whenever it came to explaining their talent. They were telling some guys, you're good in the ring. You need to work on this, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. They just told me outright, we like you. You're entertaining. Mm-hmm. So I was 28 whenever I did that.
Yeah.
And I kind of knew then I'm winding down. I'd always planned on if I don't at least have a TV match for WWE or Impact or something by the time I'm 30, I'm not going to be that guy on the indie scene who is in his late 30s, early 40s with a broken down body trying to convince himself I still have a chance.
Yeah.
Because you don't.
You're
right. And I know a lot of guys who are great indie wrestlers. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to be a great weekend indie wrestler.
Yeah.
And I could very easily do that. Mm-hmm. But the fact is, I need knee surgery. I've got some issues with my elbow. I've got some issues with my lower back. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't doing crazy bumps. I was very much an old school Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard style worker.
Yeah.
So for my body to be that beat up, I don't know how those guys who are doing the high spots every weekend, how they function, without handfuls of painkillers and stuff like that.
I don't know, man.
And I hate that. And I've never been on gimmicks, so that was never for me.
Yeah.
But I kind of knew after that tryout, like, okay, I'm winding down. And I worked, a handful of shows afterwards. Mm-hmm. In 2013, a year later, I lost the job that pretty much supported my wrestling habit.
Yeah.
I lost my insurance. I lost my safety net, basically.
Yeah.
And for the next 6 months, I was working a couple of part-time jobs. I was doing some stuff under the table. I was still working on the weekends, wrestling on the weekends.
Yeah.
And I was doing everything I could to survive. But at this point, I'm 29 years old, and I'm starving. Mm-hmm. Like, bills are, piling up. Power's being cut off.
Yeah.
I'm living on Dollar Tree food. Mm-hmm. And I'm not a poor, pitiful me person. I don't seek sympathy whenever I tell people stuff.
Yeah.
Because I'm a big believer in I've got a roof over my head. I've got a car to drive me to and from. Mm-hmm. I've got food in the fridge. I'm richer than so much of this world, and I'm blessed beyond measure.
That's right.
But whenever I was 29, 2013 was a tough year.
Yeah.
And about a week before my birthday, right before I turned 30, I broke down one night. I had a really bad night, and I broke down one night in prayer, and I started crying my eyes out. And I said, God, something has to change. And it's one of those few times I've just heard the voice of the Lord so clearly tell me, you have to walk away from it.
Yeah.
And I truly felt like God told me, if you walk away from this one thing you've always loved, I'm going to bless you, but you have to walk away from it. You have to be done. A few days later, I told my last few bookings, like, hey, this date's going to be my last show. I'm done after that. Within a week after announcing that, I went to work one day, and my boss at the time pulled me aside and he said, hey, we're going to go and start the paperwork, but you're going to get a store in the next 2 months, and we're going to promote you to manager.
Oh, awesome.
And I'm getting goosebumps talking about this right now, but it's a sign of how good God is. Within 5 months, I got bumped to a bigger store and got a really good promotion. I'm now in charge of, in my shoot life, I'm in charge of 6 stores. I'm blessed beyond measure.
Yeah.
The problem is, just whenever I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
Yeah.
And so whenever the opportunity came up to do the tribute show last year for your dad.
Was that the first match you worked?
That was the first match I'd worked since 2013.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because I'd been, I knew I was done.
Yeah.
I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I have no desire to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And I'd been facing a lower back injury for a while.
Yeah.
So I was really nervous going into that match that, I might really aggravate my lower back. And instead, and going by what a lot of people told me, Morgan and I had the match of the night.
Yeah, y'all did.
I thought we told a great story. I thought we had a great match. We probably had, I'd say, 200, 250 people there that night.
Well, at the fairgrounds?
Yes.
It's 500 plus.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, we did the count.
Well, as most of my exes can tell you, I'm not good at measuring. Anyway, but we had a hot crowd, and it just felt so great to go out there and hear, I guess 500 plus chant Mercer sucks one more time. Have them eating out of, the palm of my hand with my promo, which your dad always supported me cutting promos. So my promo was getting great heat. Morgan got a huge babyface reaction whenever he came out because I just hyped him up so much. So whenever that match was over, I went to the back and you've done this a handful of times now. I've never done any drugs whatsoever, but the high you get off of a great match, and people don't understand that come down. I'm sure it's the same whenever you play an awesome set.
Yeah, it is.
It's a drug, and you just you want that. You need that to hit your veins, and you need to keep pushing. And so it went from, okay, this is going to be the last one. This is for Wayne, and this is for Kidman, to I could probably do this a handful more times. And then we worked the Toys for Tots show last year.
Yeah.
And it was like all that excitement that I'd had beforehand was just gone. My lower back kept bothering me. My knee was bothering me. And I was just like, why am I doing this? My dad came to watch that show. I was talking to him afterwards, and he goes, what is wrong with you? And I was like, man, I don't love this the way I used to.
Yeah.
Like it was night and day compared to the show previously.
Yeah.
And so I've recently moved. I'm no longer traveling for work.
Yeah.
My body is in really good shape right now. I still look terrible, but I'm in really good shape.
Better than me, shit.
So I was in a position whenever I got to that show, like, I could probably do 1 or 2 shows a month.
Yeah.
I could probably do, every weekend. I could probably do 2, really like convincing myself the more and more I could do.
Yeah, trying to build it back up.
And then I had this huge amount of conviction come over me, and it was just, why are you doing this whenever I told you to walk away?
Yeah.
And I was just like, you know what? You're right.
Yeah.
God protect me, get me through this one. And that's why whenever me and Ox went out there, as soon as we locked up, I was like, hey, man, this is my last match. And he goes, it's a hell of a time to break it on me. And so I think we had a good match.
That was a great match.
I think we went out pretty well. And one last time to get people booing me and telling me that I suck is a real nice way to go out. So,
and I couldn't thank you enough.
Oh, man, it was my pleasure. Again, for everything that your family has done for me, giving me the opportunity to live my dream. Me and my dad talked about this recently. I know I'm giving a lot of long-winded answers.
It's totally fine. It's totally fine. I love long-winded answers because I'm not a very long-winded dude. And here I'm hosting a fucking podcast.
Right. My dad and I spoke about this recently. My dad was a race car driver.
Yeah.
My dad is still recognized on a lot of the smaller tracks around here. Whenever he goes to watch these races as a fan, a lot of people still know Get Down Alvin Mercer.
Yeah.
My dad is still immortalized at Waycross Motor Speedway. He was the 1978 track racing champion of Waycross Motor Speedway, and my dad is still a legend over there.
Yeah.
And my dad, to this day, he's 62 years old. He's got a bad back. He should not function the way he does. He's just too stubborn to stay down.
Yeah.
My dad would still be on the track every weekend if he could. My dad absolutely loves it.
Yeah.
And my dad asked me one time, he goes, do you ever feel like you didn't achieve what you wanted to achieve? And I was like, well, it's all about perspective. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, well, you didn't make it to NASCAR. You weren't a national champion. I said, but doesn't it feel awesome to know that whenever you go to Swainsboro, whenever you go to the Waycross Motor Speedway or Golden Isles, they still know who you are. People still come up to you and are like, hey, you're Get Down Alvin Mercer. I watched you race 30 years ago.
It's a legacy. It's a relative legacy.
Right.
Yeah.
And I said, for me, and this might not mean much to most people, but to work shows with guys like Brad Armstrong, who was one of my favorite workers. I was always a fan of real wrestlers whenever I was a kid.
Yeah.
And have Brad Armstrong tell me, it was a good match.
Yeah.
And then tell somebody else, go work out, you suck.
Yeah.
To have Ricky and Robert put me over, to have Tommy Rich put me over, Glacier, who people...
Nicest dude ever.
Nicest dude you will ever meet. If anyone has the opportunity to sit down with him and pick his brain, is just a wealth of knowledge about the sport. Because here's a guy who was trained by Lou Thez. A lot of people don't realize that. Worked with Dusty Rhodes for years. And everybody thinks about the Mortal Kombat gimmick, but the dude has got such a wealth of knowledge.
Yes.
Worked a match with him and Tommy Rich one time. And Glacier, Ray, whatever you want to call him, could not put me over enough. Like, everything I was doing, I was like, hey, do you want, what are you going to take over? No, keep working my leg. This is good. Just kept telling me more stuff to do. Mm-hmm. Made me look like $1 million.
Yeah.
Ayakea, working shows with Dennis Condrey of the Midnight Express, working shows with a lot of these guys who I grew up watching on TV.
Yeah.
And them kind of putting me over.
Yeah. I honestly think that's a success in my book.
To me,
I think it is.
Absolutely. And, whenever we were working for your dad 15 years ago, the next step up was NWA Anarchy. Mm-hmm. Because, at the time, it had just been WCW's feeder fed.
Yeah.
It was becoming TNA's feeder fed at that time. Anarchy called me. In 2009, I had a chance to go up there and work for them. And it wasn't because I was calling them every weekend. I'd kind of accepted they weren't going to call me. And then they called me one day and said, hey, we need you on this date. We want you to come up and work for us. To have a lot of guys, Kidman, God rest his soul, the night he and I worked, he came to the back with this huge smile on his face and picked me up like a little kid, on Christmas morning, goes, if I could work with you every night, I would never need to take time off for my injuries. Because we went out and had a, very much an old school, simple, just work the crowd match.
Yeah, and even as a young kid, every time I watched your matches, I always knew that you were the safest dude in the back. In terms of just a match construction, like, you don't have to do these high spots to get over. You don't have to you don't have to fucking jump off of anything to do it. You can just
do less to make it mean more.
If you have the crowd in the palm of your hand, you could do anything.
In hindsight of a lot of things, I was a bit of a prick whenever I was a kid because I was so enamored with the business. And I think this happens on a lot of indie shows is you have a lot of guys who are wrestling fans.
Yeah.
And there may be good athletes, there may be this, there may be that, but they're not obsessed with the business.
Yeah.
I was obsessed with the business since I was 4 years old.
Oh, yeah.
And so I knew as a wrestling fan, like, this is going to get over. Mm-hmm. And one of those times that I would have been a lot better off just shutting my mouth and just sitting down and being quiet like your dad kept trying to tell me to do.
Yeah.
There was a match that it was Paul versus Dirty Dog. Mm-hmm. And they told me right before they went out, like, and they're going to hear this and hate me, and I don't care. I love both those guys. They can get over it.
Yeah.
But they told me, like, watch this. We're about to make that crowd lose their mind. And they went out and just had a high spot fest. And they got a smattering of applause, but it wasn't the reaction they should have gotten because they didn't tell a story with it. Mm-hmm. And I went out there 5 minutes later, a year in the business, not knowing what I'm doing, get somebody in a headlock. They push me off. I grab them by the hair, pull the headlock back, look at some big woman in the crowd and said, "That's right, fatty. What are you going to do about it?" Boo! And the entire crowd's just eating it up.
Oh, yeah, man.
And, I mean, God knows whenever it comes to making it look athletically gifted, I sucked at that. But as far as telling a story, I always enjoyed that part of it. Mm-hmm. So whenever I say I'm done as an in-ring performer, I absolutely mean that.
Yeah.
I could see myself, if the opportunity arose, being a manager, being a booker.
And that was what I was going to ask you. That's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you.
I would. You're looking for me to help you out with that?
Yes. Well, I want to do an SGWA overhaul, and I want to. And that's another reason I've been watching these tapes is I wanted to see how it was.
I could absolutely do that. My goal is, again, I'm no one. And as I said at the beginning of this, Matt Mercer is a figment of my imagination. Mm-hmm. It is a cosplay character I got to perform in front of people who, for whatever reason, paid to watch me do this. Mm-hmm. But I think in a lot of ways, again, not as an actual athlete, not doing a bunch of big moves, but in telling a story, I think I was fairly good at that. I think I'm very strong whenever it comes to cutting promos.
Yes.
I think that was always one of my strong suits.
That was very much.
So I think as a performer, if I were to be a wrestling manager, someone has to be the next Paul Heyman. Someone has to be the next Bobby Heenan.
Yes.
So I think there's a spot for that.
I think so.
And I think it's a shame that in 2018 there are very few wrestling managers anymore.
Yeah, all I can think of is Dr. Brock.
Well, whenever I say a wrestling manager, I don't just mean I see Joseph Brock as more of a Lou Albano.
Yeah.
And what I
can
mean
see
by that is he's not an active performer. He can't bump.
Yeah.
And I love Joseph, wonderful person, fellow brother in Christ. He can't bump. He's a great character.
Yeah.
He's a good snarky heel. But he can't bump, and he's not going. You're never going to see a match where if his charge loses, the babyface gets 5 minutes in the ring with him.
Yeah.
You're never going to see that again.
You're right.
You're never going to see that. If the Rock and Roll Express wins, they get 5 minutes in the ring with Jim Cornette.
Yeah.
But someone has to carry that on, and I think I could do that.
I think so.
I think I have a strong mind for helping book. I think if we were to develop a TV property, there's a strong way to do that.
Yeah.
As far as being an in-ring performer on a weekly basis, absolutely not.
Yeah.
My knees are gone. My back hurts. I'm too old for this.
I understand. I just know the business is in your blood, and I know that there's – I know your place in the business. There is a place in the business for you.
I think on a very small scale there might be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think that's a good closer, too. A to be continued of what – may come. Who knows? Who knows if you won't see Matt Mercer again in a different light.
In a different light. Yes.
In a different light. Just thank you so much for coming all the way out to to Rascals in Lake Park of all places. I mean, I figured I was real close to where you live now, and
yes.
I figured it would be a good opportunity to hook up and just shoot the business a little bit.
Absolutely. I appreciate you asking me to do this.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
All right.